Thank you. We're ready to go. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your attendance to the infrastructure meeting this afternoon. And I'd just like to remind you that there will be no other recordings. This meeting will be audio recorded, and those in attendance should refrain from making any defamatory statements. There are to be no other recordings of this meeting without prior authorisation of the committee. And first of all, I'd just like to welcome our new Interim General Manager, Glenn Inglis, is present today. Thank you very much. And we're looking to welcome Graham Wilson, that may be here later. But anyway, when he comes in, he'll be noted that he is here as well. So we'll just continue. Is there any apologies? No apologies? Now there's a declaration of interest. I've just been given one. Nicholas Haviott, Director of Infrastructure Services, a non-pecuniary, non-significant conflict regarding business paper number ISC 08.8. He has to attend he's involved in that meeting. Do we just note that?
And yes, and sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair. I actually haven't put one in written format, but I'm putting one in as well right now. I had problems with the form. I also have a conflict with respect to the same one. So ISC 0.87 and ISC 08.8, and that is because I own property on Moobie Road, and also I am the partner of one of the community members who's made a delegation to council about connecting Moobie to the village reticulation scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. It's so noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair. I'll note mine as well. It's non-pecuniary, non-significant. However, I live on that water reticulation, and when the pressure goes up, it will affect my property.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. So noted. Is there any public participation? There being no public participation, we'll now move to the business items on page 1. ISC 8.1. Philip Hood. Philip is not here. Thank you, Nicholas. You'll take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, our water team's an apology today, so I'll be running you through the water and sewer update. The highlights for last month, there's 3 key ones, which is the main 2 I'll touch on, which is the bold water alert across the network. At the time of writing this report, it was the Scone, Aberdeen and Murrurundi systems. The update today is a little bit more current than when this was reported last week. We've still got step 1, Murrurundi has been moved back to their old system, and the alert's been removed there. They've got good results there at the moment. The Scone and Aberdeen systems have still got an alert. We're still working through getting that turbidity levels to return to normal standards at the moment, working with New South Wales Health and DPI on that. Looking to get a result as soon as we can. I'd love to give a time frame, but yeah, we got another meeting scheduled tomorrow morning with New South Wales Health, and hopefully we can give you some more timelines on that there. The issues have been caused from 2 sources of water. The Hunter River at Aberdeen, with the high flows from the rain, has caused increasing turbidity there, and also when we've used the Glenbourne Dam. As you know, the last few months we've had an algae bloom in the Glenbourne Dam and not been able to use it. When we've used the lower offtake at Glenbourne Dam, it's had high turbidity readings as well, which has prevented us from using that. But New South Wales Health, as of yesterday New South Wales Water, as of yesterday afternoon, has said that the algae readings are now stabilised, which is good news, and they're in the process of moving us back to the higher offtake, which should help our situation. Once that's happened, I'll let the councillors know where we're up to on that. Any other questions about the board water alert?
Yes, Nick, I have a question. With the, how are we going to overcome this? Because this seems to be something that's continuing. Is there some other way that we can do things, or do we need a water purification plant?
Yep. So there's two things there. The team are going to, well, step one, turbidity can only be treated by treatment plant. So without a treatment plant, there is no barrier to manage this. The only way to manage it is by continuing to do a lot of testing to identify when these peaks happen and to try and isolate the systems so that we minimise the amount of water that comes in. The challenge is testing is always reactive. So you test to find it's there, not, it's hard to foreshadow. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, you'd need a treatment plant to be able to prevent this from happening.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not sure, but when are we getting a treatment plant soon? Because this does seem to be something that crops up a lot.
Yes, we've been talking with DPI and New South Wales Health for the last couple of years about treatment plants for Scone. That is currently an unfunded project, and we're continuing our discussions with them to get it to a stage where we could seek some funding. But as you know, this committee's seen some concept designs and processes about what council's doing about trying to develop that project. So hopefully it does happen soon.
Thank you, Nick. Could we make that a priority? It would seem that we need to really scope that and get on with it as soon as possible.
Certainly, yes. The other key project I'll draw your attention to is Cassler Sewer Scheme. So this is a project that's been going on for a while in the development phase. We've re-engaged Public Works Advisory to help us progress that project. I think last month we talked about the project needing to be not go out with a design and construct tender, do a design only tender and then do a construct only tender afterwards. Public Works Advisory have revised the numbers. There's been some debate about what the right concept cost is, but at this stage it's still looking at that. Well, Public Works Advisory came back with a $4.9 million cost for the project, which is higher than what we've got funding for. So we're still trying to refine that concept design. The feeling at the moment is that we're going to have to go out with the design component to remove the variables and understand that project a bit more before those prices can be refined. But obviously we won't be proceeding with that project until we've got some firm numbers and funding. So as we progress that project, we'll just keep you up to date on it. Any questions about that one?
Any idea of when those numbers will be completed and be able to present it to us?
Looking at the design tender to go out next, hopefully we'll be able to let the design tender in August, but that'll take a couple of months to be awarded and then develop it. So it's going to be a few months in design before we'll be able to refine those numbers.
Is it correct then that once that design tender is known, well, it must be known now, to try and increase our funding, because it just seems to be quite above the amount of money that we've got available?
Yep, so staff are talking to the Department of Planning and Industry and Environment, or DPI, about sourcing additional funding for that project.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
And then if we go over to page
thank
6 to 11, where all the project items are, if there's any items of those you'd like further information, I'll do my best to answer those for you. Otherwise, that's all I've got for that report.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Look, I just have the item 3, supply Parkville, Blandford and Windgen reticulation water. That seems to be being dealt with, I think, later on in the report. Is that the same one?
Yes, so it's the same one, but the short answer is as we resolved at last council meeting to go with community consultation on the project, we're in the process of drafting those consultation documents, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll start that consultation with the relevant communities.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I have a question
Yes,
as well.
Councillor Rabbit.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. On page 10, the item, the reference number 45, do we have more in, is this with respect to the petrol station?
This is respect to the incident that we had with the sewer and the fuel in the, the fuel in the sewer line. All this is looking at from a council perspective, managing the sewer network. We've put the, as the comments say, that we've put the CCTV cameras up the network. We've identified that some of that network could be renewed, and that's getting, I believe, going to get included in the scope of works for the next tender process to try and reline some of that line. But from a, that's purely from a sewer perspective.
Right. So that doesn't happen again.
Just to prevent anything that's not supposed to be in the sewer coming through in. Yes.
Yep. So that is preventable, is it? I mean, I don't know about petrol leaks, but you can prevent them from leaking into the sewer lines?
All we can do is focus on our infrastructure, and if there's repairs in our infrastructure that we need to improve, that's all we can do. So you can't eliminate it because there's always infiltration points in the sewer network, particularly during storm events. We get a lot of water through there, but all we're going to do is just get our sewer line into the best condition that we can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? I'll ask for a mover and a seconder of ISC 8.1. Moved, Councillor Driscoll, is that correct?
Yes, and I'll second it.
You'll second it, Councillor Abbott. Is there any dissension? There being no dissension, the resolution is passed. I'd like to turn over now to page 12, ISC 8.2, Works Program Infrastructure. Sam, is Sam present?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so just running through the report quickly. Willow Tree Road upgrade. Still working with the working group to get the design finalised to go out to tender. Also, still monitoring it daily, keeping an eye on the defects that we have there. Nandera Road, Darkbrook Road, works are progressing out there. Works are going quite well. Again, wet weather has delayed progress there. Budget-wise, we're tracking quite well on that project.
Sam, just one concern. Have MR358 and MR62 Bunnan Road, that seems to be a concern within the community. Can we have a press release to tell them where we're up to? Is that possible? I did mention it to the general manager in an interview. Is that possible, that we can just tell people where we're up to, why that we can't open the road? Is that possible? Maybe if I ask the general manager.
No, I think possibly what we need to do is meet as the working group for that, and then have that discussion and put some media out.
Okay, that'll be good.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Can I ask, where are we up to with the Merriwell Willow Tree Road? So it's closed. There's no traffic going through. Is that correct?
I'll let Sam at it, but that's not correct. It's still the 5-tonne limit. Is that correct, Sam?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Right. So okay, and so you'll keep us updated whether there will be a press release. I think that's a good idea from Councillor Campbell about a press release, because people are very concerned and I think they want to know continuously what's happening. We could probably do a weekly one.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, that's certainly our intention, and the general manager has just said yes, that matter will be dealt with. Thank you.
Just through you, Mr. Chair. After our walk down the other day with Councillor Fisher and myself, I've talked about it on radio on 2 or 3 occasions, right, and just asked for patience and just ask them, please don't take their trucks on it, because we are aware that trucks are going through there.
Really? Okay. Okay, well, thank you anyway for that update. And also perhaps the MR 62, the Bunnan Road widening stage 1, I read is funded. And so that will proceed. Is that correct, Nick? Or
Yeah, so through the chair, the objective with that project is it's a funding, we've got funding, part funding for the whole project. So we need to, we're going to develop all 3 segments and get those pre-planning works all done. Then we'll start that work. So, so there's still a lot more work to do from a pre-planning perspective, but we can give a community update on that project as well, if you would like.
yeah, I'd certainly like both those roads seem to be in the community's mind. Thank you. Sam, you continue if you wish. Yes, well, you're up to the Nandara and Artbrook Road drainage, aren't you?
Did we miss Hunter Road?
Through
Sam,
this,
you have the floor.
progressing as well. The issue that we're having out there is wet weather again. It was proposed to be finished by the end of this month, but with the weather the way it is, it's likely to be pushed out into early September.
Thank you. The same thing with the Morella Street Causeway. That hasn't progressed any further.
Through the chair.
Any closer to getting some construction done there?
No. Through the chair, we're still waiting on a response to see whether we can actually go ahead with the project with those variations that have been requested.
Okay, thank you. We'll just turn over now to page 22. The works delivery or grant funded projects. Any questions or comments on those pages? I've asked this before, but I didn't notice the answer to my councillor question that the privacy guard at privacy screen at Merriwood, there was a delay in delivery. Has any progress been made there?
Still having
of the item. Yeah, go on.
Through the chair, we're still having trouble getting the contractor to supply that. Several staff members have made an attempt to get that finalised, but still hasn't happened.
Thank you. Anyway, I guess we just have to have patience. There being not a show out there this year, then it's not quite as relevant. However, they seem to still use that showground continuously and for a lot of horse events. So anyway, that's fine. Any further questions or comments?
Yes. Through
Yes.
you, Mr. Chair. The Morella Street Causeway, what were the variations?
So through the chair, I'll take that one, Sam.
Oh, thank you.
So as you're aware, the initial proposal was a low-level bridge
Yep.
to be constructed. So the variation was, as resolved by council, to change that to a causeway.
Yes.
We've put that request to the funding body, and we're just waiting on a response on that. So it took a bit of time to pull all the information together. We've sent it through. We're working with it's joint funding application with Muswellbrook Council. So we're working with Muswellbrook Council to the funding body and we're just waiting on their approval. So our understanding is that that's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. And as soon as that happens, we'll be able to then progress the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
00.3, St Andrews Reserve Arena upgrade. Nothing but great feedback, Nick and the powers that be on that. All very, very happy. And the same on 01.5, the Bill Rose cricket nets, which I officially opened here a couple of weeks back. A lot of very, very good feedback, and the congratulations must go to the team.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. We'll pass that on.
Thank you. Any further comments? Regarding that, I just make the comment too at point 8, the upgrading existing change rooms, amenities, upgrade lighting lamps, top dress level and seed playing surface. Those lamps, are they within the facility, or are they some of the floodlights?
Through the chair, I think it's tower 3 or 4. It's got a missing lamp on it, so that's the main upgrade there on that project.
Okay,
And
thank
then
you.
the other lamps will be cleaned and yeah.
All right, thank you then. Any further comments on that item? Move and a seconder, please, on 0.8.3.
Move, Mr Chair.
2, it should be 2, 8.2. I think I'm wrong. Move the mayor, seconded Councillor and Councillor Driscoll. Any dissension? The resolution is changed. I'll just say if there is a dissension, because we're on Zoom, just put your hand up so that it can be recorded. Thank you. Can we turn over the page now to page 26, ISC 8.3. Alan, I yield this one. Okay, thank you. Nick, you have the floor.
All right, thank you, Mr Chairman. I'll speak on behalf of Alan. He's an apology as well. So the Scone Regional Selling Ring or the sale yards, that's project's virtually wrapped up now. Not too much more to comment on that one. I think everyone's pretty pleased with the work that's done. I think there's just a few finishing touches that need to be finalised. The main thing for discussion today is the team have moved on to is the Scone CBD revitalisation and 133 Kelly Street projects. We've now got an additional project manager on board, Graham Wilson. So he was potentially going to come today to meet everyone, but he's working basically full-time now on the CBD project. So we're getting right into that development of that project, working with Transport for New South Wales on the pavement and the details there. So there's, as you can see in that report, there's a lot happening in that space with the main issue at the moment is sorting out the drainage and flooding issues, looking at the pavement, and then some more design work in the lighting. So you should see a bit of traction in that space over the next month or so. 133 Kelly Street redevelopment. The DA's been lodged. We're just getting some things finalised with the planners before that progresses, and we'll be able to start work on that soon, hopefully. Amandel Brook Bridge replacement.
Sorry, could I ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
Through you, Mr Chair. With respect to the Scone CBD revitalisation and 133 Kelly Street, will there be any community consultation soon, or what are we waiting for?
Yes, there'll be definitely a lot of community consultation. So we're just finalising the communication plan and the documentation on the final design. So we want to, when we go back to the community through the revitalisation committee, we want to make sure that we've covered off as many bases as we can and have confidence in all that data. And then there'll be some good community consultation with our landscape architects are designing up a few things. And even with the COVID-19 situation, we're still going to make sure we have a number of different ways to engage with the community.
Great. And I'd just like to comment again. I had a briefing by Mr Fletcher, which I've really appreciated. So I'd like to extend my thanks to him again. And also perhaps a briefing like that could go out to the community or some sort of summary, because it was really helpful.
Right, thank you. I'll have a look and pass that on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just Councillor Burns.
Yeah, I'll just add to the community consultation. So part of the job of Mara, who's the actual contractor drawing up the plans, part of their scope is to do community consultation. That will be a 3-month process, and they will actually be going out to different sporting events. They're not just going to send out a letter. It's a quite in-depth and interesting process that they go through. We had hoped to have that process started a long time ago. However, as was stated in the first meeting of the Revitalisation Committee, that we would not move forward until we had a steady and clear plan. And this is getting very close now with the adoption of the ACO. The adoption of the ACO point for the street covering. And, you know, it's moving ahead forward now. I'm pretty happy with the way this project's moving.
Thank you for that update, councillor.
Thank you. Pressing on with Armadale Brook Bridge, we've obviously awarded the contract for that. We've put our sidetrack in place and we've had a test run of a rain event through there. That's dislodged some of the erosion protection around that temporary bridge. So our contractor's been out there to rectify that before it gets used. And the designs for the new structure are just getting finalised now. So once they're finalised, we should have a start date for demolition, which we will communicate across the community and councillors. We need to make sure at that space that we manage the trucks on that side track. There's a lot of freight movements in that part of the world. So we've got to get some communication out on that before it happens. Cameron's Bridge, we're just waiting on access to the adjoining property owners to see if we can commence the geotechnical investigation and finalise the alignment for that bridge so we can get that project moving. So that's connected with the renaming of the Junction Bridge. So you should see some correspondence at the next council.
Through Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Nick, how'd the survey come back from the Ruggle residents renaming of Junction?
That closed last Friday. There's mixed results, but I'll leave that for the council meeting when it gets tabled there.
Thank you.
Next project there is the Scone Regional Airport redevelopment. There's not too much else to report on that project besides the fact that we're in the process of tender negotiations, as we've discussed before, and there will be a report, I believe, coming to the August council meeting if it's ready.
Okay.
Through Mr. Chair, I think Nick, there's a presentation prior to that, I believe.
Yes.
So just can I urge all councillors, please try and attend that. This is one of the biggest projects and there's a lot of work to go through before that August council meeting.
Just to refresh the memory, when is that meeting proposed?
Sorry, through the chair, I'll just double check that for you. I did forget to mention that, so thank you for that.
It's on, through you, Mr. Chair, if I can be of assistance, it's on the 27th of August, which is a Thursday at 10:30.
27th of August. At what time?
10:30.
10:30 in the
Yes.
council
And
chamber.
I also would like to ask a question through you, Mr. Chair. With respect to Scone Regional Airport redevelopment and the review, will we be hearing the results of the independent review at that meeting? Is that what that meeting's about or part of?
Through the chair, I believe if all the information's ready, that'll be provided at that meeting, but I'll double check that with Christian, who's looking after that part of the project.
And
Okay.
the other question I have through you, Mr. Chair, is again, and I've asked this before, how can we be proceeding with negotiations for the tenders when we don't know what the review is going to actually say?
You can answer that. Or who will answer that? Go on. Go on, Mr.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair. Yeah, Councillor Abbott, as far as I'm aware there, that's a very good question. The review will be back. I think the review is very close to be back, but we just got to move on and get prepared. I mean, nothing can happen until that review's gone through. So it's really just getting prepared for that review.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, so moving on to the next item there, the replacement of the fire damaged independent living units. So over the last month or so, we've lodged the DA for that, got the geotechnical and structural work back. The next step now is to finalise the structural designs and get moving on calling for quotations on that project. So that's starting to get a bit of traction now. So that will hope be a good one to get out of the way. Old Court Theatre's complete. There's a few finalisation items that we need to do there. There's an article there of from some of the user groups that are quite happy with the work we've done there. I encourage the councillors to go and have a look at that facility now. It's come really nice. It's a shame that COVID-19's prevented us from using it.
Indeed.
And I think that's the key items from that projects team. Obviously, besides the water items, which Gavin's got later in the paper.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Mayor? No. Okay. All right. A mover and a second for that then. Moved Councillor Collison, seconded Councillor Burns. Is there any dissension? There being no dissension, the resolution is passed. If you'd like to turn over the page now to page 35, ISC 8.4. Nick, you have the floor.
Thank you. Busy day today. So this is just our standard capital works program. It's the first one for the year. So it's pretty, there'll be lots of blank lines in it. The other thing we've tried to do is chop off the last 3 or 4 months so the text is larger. So if the project's not phased, it's because it's in the back end of the year. But I figured you don't want to see those, you want to be able to see the text. So
Thank you so much for
I'll
your
hand you
consideration.
back to the chair.
Okay, let's turn over then to page 2 of 8, 1 general fund, 1 down to 65. And we'll just take a few moments to look at that. And is there any comments or questions? If there is not, we shall continue on page 3 of 8, number 66 to 123.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Number 76, 145 Liverpool Street, Scone. It's got an original budget of 160,000 in there. Why is that still in the budget this year?
Through the chair, I'll take that one on notice.
Yeah.
Real estate, I'll have to get an answer back to you on that one.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear what Councillor Burns asked.
Oh, sorry, he
I'm sorry.
just checked what that project was and why the funding was against that line item. So I'll just double check that information and provide it to the committee.
Which project was that? Which line item?
Line item 76,
Right.
145 Liverpool Street, Scone.
Thank you.
Any further comments on that page? If not, we'll turn over to page 4.
Could I just,
Yes.
the waste, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, waste management. So that's all progressing, is it? What the upgrade stage for Murrurundi and Merriwa? What those upgrade stages? I know you've told me before. Can you just remind me?
Yep, so through the chair, so my understanding on those projects is that's the the transfer facilities at Murrurundi and Merriwa that we got funding for last year. They're planning to deliver those projects this year.
Wonderful. And Aberdeen is getting a weighbridge.
Yes, that's the proposal. Yep.
Great. And so that's the proposal. So it's not actually happening yet.
I'd have to double check. I know a little bit about the waste area, but I don't know all the questions. But I can confirm that funding's secured. I'm
Great.
just not sure whether that part's funding secured. I know that the other two were. I just need to double check that one for you.
Thank you.
Also, what are the proposals for cashless? Are there any further developments there?
I'll take that one on notice.
Yeah,
I'm not
okay.
sure about that. I'll talk to the director and get back to you.
Good, that'll be good. Thank you. Okay. We'll turn over then to page 4, 124 to 188. Is there any comments or questions on that page?
Yes, through you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair. Tree planting. So we are planting trees. Does that mean we're planting trees?
Through the chair, yes. So part of that funding will go to the Gundy project as
Oh, yes.
approved in last budget. But I believe Sam is very enthusiastically putting a program together and get trees planted early this year instead of late. Do you agree with that, Sam?
We can't hear you, Sam.
Through the chair, that's correct. I've got 50% of the funding for the trees to be spent by September, and then the remaining 50% will be spent in May. The focus is on our parks and open spaces, just to replace trees that have been removed over, or basically dead trees over the last several years.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, in that money that's to be used for planting trees, do we have money for looking after the trees as well?
Yep, through the chair. So in our maintenance budget, which you'll see when you look at the finance paper, that's not part of this spreadsheet. There's a section under the parks for tree maintenance, and that's the money that goes towards the maintaining our tree stock.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on that page? If not, we will turn to page 5, item 189 to 244. Just on the item 198, the Mirrorwall painting, now, what's that about? Is that to do with a hall or something? Could you just, 198, the Mirrorwall painting, 5269.
I'll have to take that one.
Yeah, that's fine.
This
Okay.
doesn't, I agree with you that it doesn't have a good name. We'll just confirm the location of that. I just can't quite remember where that's coming from.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before you move on.
Yes.
Nick, 214, no doubt that's the start of that drought stimulus money. Where are we up to with those projects?
Yep, so 214 is the Rupel Tennis Courts upgrade. So the Drought Community Program extension, we've applied for the funding now. We have been, the relevant department has assessed the funding and they've sent it to the Minister for sign-off. They said that it would take about 4 weeks to get approved, about a week ago. Once that money is approved, we can then commence construction. In the meantime, the works delivery team have finalised the scope of those projects and started to seek quotations from contractors to be able to do that work. So as soon as those deeds are executed, we'll be able to commence those works.
So through you, Mr. Chair, so that they're going to be completed by end of December. So we've got some work to do.
Correct. So through the chair, the program is to be finalised by the December. I've had discussions with the funding body about the delivery of that, and they said that once we get approval, if we needed to apply for a extension, if we've got that will be considered, and in the current circumstances with COVID and the ability to get contractors and things at the moment, that would be strongly considered.
So through you, Mr. Chair, Nick, could I have an update on that for next week? I might put that on radio because there is concerned people out there, organisations, believe they're running out of time, so it might be a good story.
Not a problem.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Item 228, Nick, the Mirrorwall, the upgrade barbecue area, and that's at the Mirrorwall pool. How are we going with that?
Yep, so team's been working on this one well. That's part of that Drought Community Programs project. So I believe Sam scoped that project and basically got most of the things quoted and ready.
Right.
Just need to get the approval and then we can launch straight into that one.
Where's the approval coming from?
So just waiting for the Drought Community Program to be approved,
Okay.
and then we'll be able to progress.
Okay, I have another one too, just regarding the 223 and 227, the disabled steps. That is in the Depop. How are we going? I thought that was fully funded, but it's not. It's only partially funded. Is that correct?
Correct. So we applied for some money on that. I can follow up where that is. We are awaiting a announcement on whether we were successful with that funding. So that was a 50% grant funding project. So in essence, one of those steps is funded. The idea is to use get 50% grant funding, 50% council funding. Should we be unsuccessful, as I've said in previous correspondence, we need to review the other projects in that pool space and make that project a priority and just press on with it. So, but that is once we engage the supplier for that, it's about an 8 to 10 week lead time with those steps.
Okay. And also regarding that, with the disabled steps, is there any funding that could be taken from one of the stimulus packages to do that, or not? Or is it totally different?
Through the chair, so it's possible, but once we start looking at other funding streams, we're going to have to wait for those funding streams to get approved. So we can consider all options, but I think step one is I'll follow up where the current application's up to.
Yes. And
work out how quickly we can progress that.
Thank you. Councillor Abbott, you had a
Yes.
question.
Yes, with respect to the same two items that you've just mentioned, 223 and 227. So it's now says $10,000, but before it was $15,000. Does that mean is that what you're saying? We got the $5,000 for each of those steps?
No, the current estimates for the project to do the work is a net $10,000 for each step. So
that's gone down, because last time it was 15,000.
yeah, so it was an estimate at 15,000, but we think we can deliver the project for $20,000 in total. Yes.
Great. And so I note that the upgrade barbecue area was that a drought funding or a community drought funding? We can't do that for these steps because they're so important.
The drought community program funding was for the barbecue facilities. That was a decision that program, a list of projects was identified and resolved by council to use that funding for the respective projects.
So through you, Mr. Chair, how likely is it that we'll have these steps in before summer, which essentially is October?
It's unlikely that we'll get the steps operational by the start of the pool season. But basically what we need to do is make a decision in the next couple of weeks whether this funding source is going to work. If it's not going to work, I'd like to propose to the General Manager a alternative way of funding those two projects.
I fully support that.
Council's funds.
Yes, that would be great. And thank you. And there's just one more that I meant to mention and I missed it. It was 188 Scone Library Development. There's $2,000 there. What does that entail, the library development?
What number was that, Councillor?
Sorry, I do beg your pardon. It was on the previous page and it's the very bottom line item, 188.
188.
Yes.
So, Councillor Abbott, through the chair, I believe that that's just the beginning of the design work for the library. So the library team in the environment and community area will be able to give you more information on that. But I just think that's just the beginning funding.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all. Thank you very much.
Any further questions on that page? If not, we'll turn over to page 6, items 245 to 307.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Nick, the Hunter Road, Narracourt to Glenmore Bridge, there's $2 million there. It's obviously dependent on grant funding. How are we going with that?
Which item are we speaking about?
Oh, sorry, it's 281.
281, item 281.
Yep. So as you're aware, we applied for fixing country roads funding for Hunter Road. We put when we put this budget together, we were optimistic that we would secure funding for that and proposed that we could start that in the second half of this year. To date, we haven't been advised of whether we've been successful or unsuccessful in that funding stream. So again, we can follow that one up and see if there's any announcements kicking around.
Yes, please. And line 282 and 283, Forest Road. How are we going with cleaning out the gutters there?
I can refer you that one to the Works Manager. Sam, if you wanted to answer that question.
Sam, you have the floor.
Through the chair, So with that, it's the program is that it'll be completed in the next couple of months. So the issue there that we've got with that particular road, we have been up there and done maintenance on several occasions, but every time it rains, we're straight back up there again, dealing with the same issues. So it's a bit more than just a maintenance activity that's required.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burns?
Yeah, I agree with you, Sam. I think we need to look at it in the long run, what we're going to do up there. Communication's the key, obviously, at this point, which I emailed you about the other day. So I'm sure if we all put our heads together, we can figure out a way out of this mess.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments on that page? If not, just turn to page 7, 308 to 371. Um, 335 Glenbourne Dam pumps emergency repairs. Was that to do with our the council's pumps, or just what's the story on that one? Could you explain, please?
Yes, that's our, through the chair, that's our pumps that are at Glenbourne Dam that are used to send water to Scone. So one of those pumps required had an unexpected fault with it, which is why it was an emergency repair. So that's just finishing that off.
Thank you.
It's all fixed now and operational again.
Still going. Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments on that page? I'd like to turn over to the last page, 8 of 8. Summary. Air Park Pump Station. Yeah, what's the story on that one? That's 374 Air Park Pump Station.
Yep. So through the chair, so that's part of the overall strategy for the airport, where we had to relocate a pump station and sewer pipeline. That's just the finishing of that work.
Thank you. And just above it, 373, the Aberdeen Rock Flume. That's work was, I understand, was to be done by the or LLS actually, Soil Conservation. How is that progressing? This has been pretty wet, so have they been able to start?
They haven't commenced yet. So through the chair, we've got an agreement with LLS and council to enter into a contract with Soilcon to undertake that works, and I believe that should be starting in the next few months.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments on ISC 8.4? Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved, Councillor Burns, seconded Councillor Driscoll. Is there any dissension? There being no dissension, the resolution is passed. We turn over now to page 41. Page 41. Nicholas, are you getting hoarse? Because you have the floor again.
I do, but Nalashki has very kindly joined us to our meeting. So Nalashki put this report together. So if you'd like to come forward and grab a chair with a mic, we welcome Nalashki to our group. If you could give us a quick overview of where we're sitting. So this is the water consumption update, and it's the first one for the...
Thank you. Indeed, welcome. We've seen you before, but anyway, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks. To Chair, just summarize for the water consumption for July. Scone Aberdeen 116 megaliters, Mirandai 5.8 megaliters, Maribo 17.4 megaliters, and Cassilis 0.86 megaliters. That's the total consumption for each town for the month, July to 2020, and total becomes 140.9 megaliter, which is 16.4 decreased compared to the last year's same month consumption. Yeah, just being the winter, and we are just in water restriction level 2 for Scone, Aberdeen and Mirandai. We can see this consumption reduction. And also there is a bit of increase compared to the June same year, just last June, compared to the last month. That's 15.9%. Any questions on that?
I guess, thank you. The graph shows
Yep.
quite clearly where our water is going, and certainly gone down. So that's been really good. And of course, Mother Nature smiled very clearly and given us some extra participation, as they call it, participation. Anyway, precipitation. Yeah. Anyway, thank you. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, in the last couple of days and certainly weeks, we've had to flush lines, and I'm heartened by the fact that our community has done their part and reduced their water consumption when we asked them to. But we, as a council, have let water go down the drain. I would like to ask, what are we going to do to stop that from now on?
Thank you.
Through the chair, I'll take this one. So yes, it's true. The last week we've flushed a lot of lines to try and reduce the turbidity in the water. Ideally, the solution there is to not get the turbidity in the water to start with. I would say that's an isolated issue. I'd like to say that it's not going to happen again, but the primary objective of doing that was to try and get the turbidity out, get the dirty water to move, and get clean water so we can remove the boiled water alert. We looked at options of capturing that water. I believe we had some questions from some councillors about can we put in trucks and take it places and things like that. In Scone, the couple of areas that we did look to was places like the racetrack where we send effluent water to. We looked at the golf course where we've got storage capacity. Because of the rain, all of those facilities were full anyway because we'd had an influx of effluent water. So we weren't able to capture it there. Capturing it in the trucks weren't going to achieve a lot because they hold small amounts compared to the amount of water we were moving. So I think operationally, unfortunately, it had to go the way it went, but we definitely are looking at ways that we can capture that water and keep that flushing to an absolute minimum.
Could the silver bullet, I'm referring to Aberdeen now, I know you couldn't capture it from the overflow there at Barton Street, but in Aberdeen there was a hydrant used. Could the silver bullet that we carted water at Marundai in, could that be used in that case?
The trucks that you're referring to hold about 30,000 litres of water. Takes about half an hour to fill. And it would be it would take a lot longer to move the dirty water out by doing that. So yes, it can be used, but it's going to definitely delay the process of trying to flush the network. It's basically trying to dump a large amount of water quickly.
So the next part of that, I suppose, is the equipment that we used in Marundai during their peak when we had to flush those lines, which had very small or very, very limited leakage. Is that not an option for us anymore?
So you're referring, Councillor, to the zero water loss flushing program that we did at Marundai during the drought. That could be an option. The challenge with that is when we requested those contractors is about a 4 or 5 month lead time. So getting them on an emergency situation like this, to be honest, we didn't check, but I would have my doubts that they would be able to respond so quickly. But we can definitely make inquiries to see if we can get them in the future.
Just through you, Mr. Chair. You finished, Councillor Burns?
Oh, I was just going to say, it sounds like that the staff did all that they could at the time and worked in the best that they could. So I'm satisfied with the answers. Thank you very much.
So through you, Mr. Chair, some years ago, Nick, we did a cost analysis on this about the time you got the trucks and the labour and all. It didn't add up. The finances didn't add up. You could buy the water cheaper than what it was going to cost you to transport.
appreciate that. I think that's a fair assumption, a fair analysis. I think the other part we're trying to manage is the environmental side too. So we don't want to just let water go. It's sad to see it go, even though it's raining, it doesn't mean the drought's over. So we are trying to minimise the amount that we have to discharge.
With the, is there any data on just how much money, how much water was used or lost? We'd call it lost. Is there any data on that?
We can do a calculation to work
Just a
out.
calculation.
I don't have that at hand.
Yeah, no, I don't take time over, but I think a rough calculation to see, well, okay, that's the amount of water we lost. And that's the result. Okay. Any further questions or comments? Mover and second for ISC 8.5. Councillor Burns, seconded Councillor Driscoll. Is there any dissension? There being no dissension, the recommendation is passed. We turn over now to page 48, ISC 8.6. Nicholas, you going to fill in for Chris?
I got the fund for most of these projects whilst a few people are on leave, so that's all right. So this report is following on. We used to do this regularly for the Murrurundi Pipeline project. Now it's the that project's moved into the village reticulation and Murrurundi Reservoir update. The format's exactly the same as what we had before. I think the key things to note here is that, as you're aware, we've engaged a detailed design for the villages. We're preparing the community consultation at the moment, and we're in the process of reviewing the tenders for the construction of the Murrurundi Reservoir, which will go to the August council meeting. The consultation is the main thing to get right now, and then we can finalise the detailed design and refine the costings for this project from the village perspective. And obviously we'd like to award the tender for the reservoir.
Mr. Chair, quick question, Nick. Villages, does that mean how they work where the village is? Is it inside the 60 zone or is it in the circle of the village, or what is it?
Thank you. Through the chair. So the villages are obviously the Parkville, Wingen and Blandford villages themselves. It's basically what we've tried to do is look at the current footprint of where the community have established the village. So if you go back to the original parish maps, the village is not quite where the residents have got all their smaller lots, but it's that denser lot formation in those areas, which is the villages. At the moment, the design is for the whole lot, but as we pointed out in those presentations the last few months, that total cost is bigger than the project that we've got. So the objective now is to go back to the community and talk to them about their demands and which part of those areas actually will want the water and how we actually service those relevant communities.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair, I think that's important because if your house is just outside that circle of village, you have that ability to hook on.
Nick, also, would it be that those it's an availability of water, but the resident has to connect to that by their voluntary connection? Is that correct?
So through the chair, the current proposal is to provide town water to these villages.
Right.
So the same methodology will apply to the village blocks as would a town system. So once the water goes past their property, they'd be having an access charge and all the associated charges. That's the current proposal, but obviously we are going out to community consultation to see their feedback, and then that information will come back to council, and then we'll be able to make a decision about how we manage that.
Thank you. But in effect, the water is offered to those who would want to connect in that village.
As I said, the current proposal would be that everybody would have to connect, and everyone would have to pay for it. So it wouldn't be an opt-in and opt-out system. It would be everybody would be connected.
Okay. All right. Look, thank you for that. Any further questions or comments? Could I have a mover and seconder for ISC 8.6? Moved councillor Driscoll, seconded councillor Burns. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, the recommendation is carried. We turn over to page 53. And the report, Gavin is not here. Nicholas, you've got the chair. Gavin. Oh, good on you, Gavin. Sorry, take the glasses off. Oh, you look better now. No, mate, I'm fooling. Go on, thank you. You have the floor, Gavin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, do we all hear? Sue, can you hear?
Yes, I can.
Good, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're asked to look into extending the water network past Dartbrook. So the current water network comes up Moobie Road as far just to the east of Dartbrook. So this proposal looks at extending to the west, essentially along Moobie Road, Yarrandirri Road, and then Dowra Road. The preliminary design done by Russell Pearce has been expanded by ADW Johnson, the engineering consultants. And essentially we found that it is technically feasible so long as we increase the water pressure. So the current water pressure of Moobie area is not sufficient. The proposed increase to Moobie Reservoir's effective height, which is the next item of business, would give enough to get out there. There's about, from the aerial photographs, there are about 18 residences that would be affected. And so it's quite a lot of pipe for the number of residences, as I'm sure you'll see in the report. We've looked to downsize some of the pipes from our normal standard, which will essentially allow enough for these connections to a similar sort of standard as we're proposing for trunk mains. But that's sort of, in this area, it would be impractical to provide fire hydrants and the like. So this proposal is for a rural connection, which is basically just supply of water. The cost estimate came in around 1.45 million.
Would you repeat the cost estimates, please? I didn't quite catch that.
The cost estimate, as of the page you've got in front of you there, came in around the $1.4 million at the concept design stage. And as you can see in table 2 there, with only 18 connections, it ends up fairly expensive per connection. So the recommendations of this report are that it is technically feasible, but it's now the opportunity to go back to the proponents and to the community and, seek their feedback.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I did see that on the page, over the page. So is there any after, if this recommendation is passed, will there be a community consultation after that? Nick, could you, or one of you, could you answer that?
I'll help you there, Gavin. So through the chair, so the objective here is just to give council an update on where this project's at.
Yes.
What sort of funding it's around. Currently, it's an unfunded project. And then the proposal would be to go back to the whole community, so we would consult with the people that we've been talking to, but also the community in that area, and have some sort of, pop-up sessions or some meetings, just like we're doing with the villages, to gauge their appetite for this. We might find that there's more people in that area than just the 18 that we've got in that footprint that would like to be connected. From that information, we can then bring that back to council and work out how we progress this proposal.
But that would not be farmland.
Yes, some of it's
Some of it is farm.
farmland. This project was proposed probably at the peak of the, well, not at the peak, but in the middle of the drought when a lot of wells in that sort of space were going dry. So they were talking about access to water. It's purely for stock and domestic. It's not a irrigation scheme or anything like that. But yeah, so there would be farms that would be looking to use it for stock and domestic purposes.
Yeah, I do remember that. I think there was some horse studs that were up. Is that, am I correct?
There's horse studs in that area, and it was a section that was identified in the scoping study that we did a number of months ago.
All right. Through you, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, just
Councillor.
Gavin, and sorry, I'll just reiterate that I do have, I live out there, so I'll just let you know that. But will the RFS shed, if this were to go ahead, would the RFS shed, would that have enough pressure at that end to put a hydrant there for a quick fill?
I'm glad you asked.
Oh,
No.
It won't?
No, we looked at what we can get there without having to put a like a fire main the whole way, and essentially where the head losses, without going for a much bigger pipe, after we go over about a couple of litres a second, are too great. We would have to put in much larger pipes.
Okay, thank you.
Just following on from that, Councillor, the current system they've got is a tank at that site. It would be just a proposal to expand their storage capacity, and then they can suck out of those pumps. So it will be a benefit to them, but not that type of benefit.
Yeah, that seems to be pretty standard procedure, and having the tanks there and a quick fill, and then because then they go to the fire, and then there needs to be other sources of water available. But to start off with, and they take the tanker from the shed, they need to have a quick fill. Okay, any further comments?
Yeah, may I interrupt?
Yes.
We looked at this, and we can get about 2 litres a second there without having to increase the pipe sizes, which is enough to keep a tank full, but you'd be disappointed in the time it took to load a 2 or 5,000 litre tanker. But it would keep a tank full, and the fire truck could come back and pump from that.
Yeah, slow fill option seems to be good. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comment, Gavin?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any comments or questions? We have further on IC 8.7. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, please. Move it, Councillor Driscoll. I'll second it from the chair. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, the recommendation is carried. We'd like to turn over to page 101 now. ISC 8.8, Moorby Road High Pressure Zone Investigation Report. Gavin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is another project in the same area. But essentially, this looks to the area east of Dartbrook and west of Cliftons Road. There's a section of that section of town is slightly higher than much of the town. And that creates, or that doesn't allow the water pressure to build. So all of Scone, in this side of Scone, is set at the same level. This proposal seeks to essentially isolate that part of town on a set of booster pumps to increase the water pressure. Due to how the way the mains are laid out, we can only really increase by about 20 metres or 200 kPa. But our analysis looks at that, and that should give the lower areas a much better water pressure, much more usable. Sorry, the high areas are much more usable water pressure without creating too much pressure down towards Dartbrook. This pressure zone, we looked at higher reservoir locations, but in this area, there's no high obvious location to be able to put a higher reservoir at any feasible economic cost. So this zone would be dependent for its pressure on booster pumps, but this isn't an unusual design for a town. They would still get, if the pumps were to go down, they would still get the same service they're getting now. There's about 150 properties in this zone, and some areas that are listed for further development within Scone. Adjoining to this is the last proposal we were just looking at, and these pumps would also feed that proposed rural connection area. We put a cost estimate together. Booster pump stations for the STM pipeline have been costing about $250,000. There is about 700 metres of pipe to change to allow this zone to be isolated, which is another couple $100,000. The concept design has this costing in the region of $500,000 to correct the pipe work to allow this and to install the booster pump station. Mr. Chair, I guess, are there any questions I can help with?
Is it how much funding money do we have to progress this?
This project isn't currently budgeted, as I understand it, and there's no funding for this project at the moment. But Nick might have a different answer.
So through the
Right
chair,
on.
that's
Yes.
correct. It's an unfunded project. It's a complaint that we've had from these residents. Over the last 5 years, it's been a regular complaint from this area about a pressure issue. So again, that was part of the reason for the investigation. Basically, the proposal today is to take this back out and just confirm with the community what we're proposing is going to address their needs. Then staff will be putting a recommendation back to council following that consultation with a proposed funding strategy.
Yes, Councillor Burns.
Yeah, just wondering, is there any chance at the Currajong Estate, the Somerset Estate and Clifflands Road and Alan Cunningham Drive, there are no parks. So presumably there would have been I think it's a section 94, is it? Contribution. Is there any chance we can tap into that for this?
I can definitely check, but my understanding is the section 94 is for the general fund, not for the water fund. But I'll check that one out for you.
Just on that, Mr. Chair, that's correct, but a general fund can still make a contribution to the water fund.
Well, in light of that, can we find out how much the section 94s were for those three developments, and maybe we can fund it with their own money?
Thank you, through the chair. We'll definitely look at that one.
Yes, I think a lot of people having dribbly showers at various times. It's not very pleasant. However, look, I agree with Nick that if we can take this out and get some community consultation and get their ideas of what they're prepared to do, and then come back to council with a proposal for how we're going to fund it, and maybe we can get some money from the general fund. We'll have to see the finance people about that. Do we have any further questions or comments? Okay, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, please. Okay, a seconder. All right, I'll second it from the chair. Any dissension? There being no dissension, the recommendation is passed. Thank you. We turn over now to page 116, ISC 8.9, answer to councillors' questions. Nicholas or Karen? But anyway, have we all read the questions? Are we happy with the answers that have been provided? And we'd like to turn your microphone on, please.
I said there's one there that's got Wayne's name on it, Wayne Bettridge.
Right, okay.
Has that been followed up?
Yes. Still working on that one. Thank you.
Yeah. I'd just like to make the comment too that Sam, thank you for answering question 8. It may have come from Nick, but that's given me the finishing the grading of Roma Road, Hampshire Road and Flight Springs Road. It just means that I can go to the people when I'm asked, look, this is programmed to go then. It depends, of course, on the weather, but it's just good that if we can just give them some kind of answer. And Nick, you might be able to help me out too on question 6, the portal signs on the Golden Highway to be erected. That was brought up last night at the tourism meeting. They are wider than the original. How can we go about getting those erected? We'd have to go to the RMS or Transport New South Wales, wouldn't we? Because that's where they need to go. Sam did say that he will inspect them when he goes to Merrywater in the works depot, but we need to go further than that. How can we progress that, Nick? Please.
So through the chair, so yes, my understanding is there's 2 signs that were, not sure who purchased them, but I believe they're actually different signs. They're not both exactly the same. But I could be wrong on that. But the short answer is that they are a different colour, they're different size to the current signs. They're not suited for that location. So should we want to install that sign on the Golden Highway, we would need to identify a new site.
Yes.
We would then need to talk to Transport New South Wales to see whether that is appropriate signage for the highway and that they support that location. And then we would be able to go through that process. So I should say Sam's Works Delivery team's going to have a look at the signage, look at some sites, and we'll come back to that committee.
Look, thank you. That's very good. On question 5, also regarding the lights over Veneker Street crossing, how are we going with that? I think you were going to look at some solar. Is there any progression on that?
So we've gone round and round in circles on this project. I appreciate that, and I appreciate there's a couple of lighting issues that just don't seem to go away. We need to do some more work with Ausgrid. We've talked to one solar company, and they said it'll be to get the luminosity right for highway standard will be expensive and potentially ugly with large amount of solar panels.
Yeah.
So we are just going to finalise that option, and if that doesn't work, we're going to have to engage a lighting designer to design us 2 new streetlight poles in that location, and then we can take that application back to Ausgrid and get approval from Ausgrid to install 2 additional lights. At the moment, we have funding for streetlights across the whole Shire of $20,000 per year. From my understanding of the cost of lighting projects, that will not be enough. So once we understand the design, we'll then be taking a report back to council to explain how we can progress that matter.
Okay. Can we? What's the time frame on that? Is it possible to have it up for council meeting soon?
Once we've engaged a suitable designer, I'll give you a time frame on that.
Okay, look, if we could do that, please. It has gone on for a long time, and I believe that our directors have taken it very much to to Ausgrid, and yes, but it's still not happening. So if we could do that, that would be very good. Thank you. Everyone else happy with their councillor questions? And are there any fresh councillor questions? Yes,
Yes.
Councillor Abbott?
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering with respect to sewer and the fact that there's been some discussion that you can pick COVID-19 up in the sewer works. And I was wondering whether I know Hunter New England Health is half interested in that sort of thing, but they would want a council who also is interested in it to actually start to initiate the process. Would we think about working with Hunter New England Health with respect to our own sewage system and whether we might be able to detect COVID-19, which can be detected before other symptoms are displayed? So that's one question.
Would you like me to answer that one?
Yeah,
before you go
just
to the
answer
next
them
one?
as you go through.
Yep.
Please.
So through the chair. So yes, there was a media release today from New South Wales Health about a detection of a fragment of COVID-19 in a sewage system at Newcastle. I've spoken to New South Wales Health about that and what we need to do at our place. That is a trial testing process that one of the universities are working with Hunter Water and New South Wales Health to do that. They do a range of different pathogen tests across all sewer networks, as I'm sure you would expect. It's a program that they're looking at targeting at areas of potential or known COVID cases. So at this stage, we wouldn't be implementing something like that. It's new and evolving technology. So we're going to continue our discussions with New South Wales Health. If they would like us to be a trial site, I have no objection to being a trial site. But at this stage, it's not something that they're rolling out across the board.
Right, just because our system must be quite, well, not unique for a country area, but it is so incredibly contained. So it must be, I would imagine, a lot harder in the town areas. And it would be something we could roll out where we had sewage systems. But I'm just out of interest because they, as you would know, with CoronaCast and all the other portals of information with respect to COVID-19, it does point to the fact that it can be picked up earlier than other symptoms within the sewerage system.
Yep.
But thank you.
At this stage, New South Wales Health are trialling that technology. It's not something that they can roll out. But as that space improves, I imagine it's something that will become probably a more common thing.
Yep, so you're in touch. That's good. Thank you
Yes.
for that. So that was that. And then, oh yes, I've asked this question before with respect to signs for the town centre when you're coming from Gundy and you get to the T-junction. And at the moment, there isn't a sign to the town centre, but that may have changed. But the last time I was there, there was no sign for the town centre.
Yep.
For Scone, that is.
We've identified that from the last couple of infrastructure meetings. We're just got to work with Transport New South Wales to get approval to put the sign up because it's still their road, but yes. I don't see any dramas with doing it. It's just got to give us a bit of time to get that implemented.
Great. And then cycling infrastructure. I want to mention that Cycling Without Age has started at the Scone Nursing Home with Hammond Care. So there are 2 rickshaws you may have seen around that are being cycled by volunteers, of which my husband is one. But I'm just wondering, I know we obviously can't go and build separate cycling infrastructure straight away, but whether there might be, we could sort of provide the nursing home with suggestions for safe routes, because I know that as they're rolling out this program, they're keen to get the oldies into town and maybe having a cuppa and doing stuff like that. So I was just wondering whether we could do even line markings on the road or signs like watch out for this, these cyclists, this very precious cargo coming around, whether we could assist there with council road signs or road paint or something like that.
Yep, first I've been aware of that one through the chair. We definitely can talk to Hammond Care and try and facilitate where we can.
Lovely, that's great. And then Osgrid as well, and the amenity trees, and the way they, I've mentioned this at a council meeting, but I know that they can come in, and under the Australian standard, they come in and they can prune the trees. But I have asked, and I don't know whether this is possible, I think it should be, that we ask Osgrid to let us know when they're coming so that we can put out a media release that they're about to prune the trees, that they'll be doing it to the standard, which I think is AS 47, I can't remember, but anyway, it's 4373. And that, so we can notify the community that this is happening, because it causes a lot of stress when Osgrid comes in and just chops down the tree. And I know they use contractors, but we need to get them to be part of this conversation. So is it possible that we start this chat with them, that when they come to our towns, they let us know beforehand? We accept that they have to do this, but that we then have the opportunity to communicate with our community that this is about to happen. Thank you.
Through the chair,
You go on.
we, as I pointed out in your questions from last month,
Yep.
We are going to make contact with Osgrid about that.
Thank you.
The main thing there is that I do believe Osgrid have their own communication channels as well. So if they are promoting the fact that they're going to be doing that work, we would piggyback on the back of that. I don't think we'll be doing media releases on behalf of their work.
Yeah, no, but just letting
can't control when they're coming and going.
Yeah, no, I totally accept that, but we can let the community know when they are coming.
Yes. Yep.
Just because I think we probably all get phone calls the minute they start chopping the trees down, and half the time I don't even know that they're here. I'm not even necessarily in town, but you get these upset people ringing you, so which is understandable, because I would feel the same if I was watching them being chopped.
Councillor, but I understand where you're coming from, and we're just going to take a little while for us to get the right people at Osgrid to talk to and get that system working. But once we've worked out how that'll work, I'll come back to you and talk to you about it.
Yes, thank you. And the other thing is, whenever we do talk to Osgrid, they always send us back how they take these things really seriously, and that they apply, they have to comply with the standard. We know all that, but I sometimes wonder whether they are complying with the standard, because the way they prune trees, it's so severe, some of those trees then end up dying. So we understand they have to prune them, but they need to prune them so that they survive.
Councillor, I just have to ask that you please get to your question. You're making lots of statements there, and which that's fine, but we can't let that go on. You have a question that needs
I have asked
to be
my question.
answered, right? Okay, please keep to your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Haviett, for your response.
Can I ask one, please?
Yes, you certainly can.
What's happening with those 3 trees? I'm getting that many complaints about them, because they know what's going to happen there.
Yep. So we're referring to the trees on the New England Highway next to Graham Street at the.
Yes, I am. Those 3 trees that were put in there.
Yep. So
There's been
hang on. Just ask the question. Yeah, that's fine.
So basically we're just going to do we agree that we need to make sure that if they're in the wrong spot, we need to relocate them. We don't want to relocate them twice, because that'll cause too much stress to the trees. So the design team are going to do a sightline survey of that intersection and confirm which trees need to be removed, whether it's 3, 4 trees or 2 trees, and then we'll relocate those to another spot. So it is going to happen. I just want to make sure we only have to do it once.
Yeah, because it is, it's going to be dangerous, I can tell you that now.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, just one thing that I have back to regarding the treatment plant for scone. We mentioned that in ISC 8.1. Do we have any data on that, the costing and that sort of thing of that? I'd just like to see that progress. Yeah, the treatment plant, we're talking about the turbidity and that sort of thing, yes.
So the Scone water treatment plant we're referring to?
Well, is that the one that would go do all the water before it goes, or just the one at Scone?
Yeah,
which is we're having this problem with turbidity.
So the proposal at the moment is we're getting a concept design completed for the treatment of water at Scone, which will happen out for the water coming from Glenbourne.
Yes.
And then that would service Aberdeen, Scone and Murrumbeena.
Right, okay.
Once the concept designs are finalised, we can then get some concept cost estimates for it. But we're having lengthy discussions with New South Wales Health and DPI about how we go about funding all that.
Okay, so it is, I'm sure we all agree that we just need to try and progress that as quickly as possible, because it will happen again, as has happened in the past. So if that's going to be progressed, we'll just get it going quickly. Councillor Byrne.
Yes, Mr. Chair. My first question, I'll add on to that. Was the water treatment plant part of the initial project for the Glenbourne to Scone pipeline?
Through the chair, no.
Oh.
So it was identified through the design phase that Scone did not require a treatment plant because the water quality was deemed to be of a sufficient quality. But obviously with the testing that we've been doing the last couple of years, there's areas there to improve. So that's why we're back, that discussion's back on the table.
That's interesting. Thank you. And my second question is Yarrandai Road. It is a through road. It is a gravel road. It was graded 6 weeks ago, and I've had just this morning 2 community members, who I won't name, come to me and speak about this very road. It was graded 7 weeks ago. The bends went through very well and they're still intact, but the rest of it has fallen apart. They understand that there is weather considerations that they have to make at this point, but they also would like a serviceable road. One gentleman that I'm aware of has spent nearly $35,000 on his car just driving to and from. So we need to do something about this road.
No dramas. I think we can take that one on notice and we'll do an assessment of that road and work out how we're going to address those issues.
Thank you very much. And my third one, I'm pretty sure it's part of this committee. Bill Rose Sporting Complex. There are a number of user groups at the Bill Rose Sporting Complex, and I propose that we put together an expression of interest and ask those sporting groups to represent themselves in a council committee. It is the only ground that doesn't have a committee, and it's the largest ground that we own. So I think we need to, I know that there was a letter sent to the former GM. We need to do something about that and put up very, very quickly, because there's funding opportunities. Those individual sporting groups are happy to do the legwork, but without our say-so to start with, the grants can go nowhere.
Happy to take that on notice and progress that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
you have
Mr.
a
Chair.
question.
I've got a couple of questions. Nick, re the pine trees around the Willerma Fire Shed and Tennis Hub, did you take that on notice back a while back? Can we have a look at that? They're talking about building another fire shed there. So what it is, council, is a heap of dead pine trees that have died. There's probably 30 of them, and they're actually falling on their own now, willy-nilly, during the wet weather. So we take that on notice and look into that one.
No dramas.
And the other one, the south and north of Scone, the entrances, is Darracon still in control of the beautification of that?
So yes, through the chair, all the areas that were impacted with the bypass are maintained by Transport for New South Wales, and their contractor is Darracon to do that work.
Right, just you come into Scone on the southern side, it's not a very pretty site with that yellow weed about 1 metre higher, and so can we look into just a little bit of prettying up there?
No dramas.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any further comments or questions, or councillor questions, I should say? There being none, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you so much for your attendance and your input.
Thank you.
Jeff?